So how does someone go into the next relationship? They had their heart broken or it didn't work out. They spent 10 years married and they have a child with someone, and you made a vow to your family and to God and your religion and everyone, and your whole values came down to this one relationship that you said, I was going to commit to this for the rest of my life. And everyone watched you say this commitment. And now how do you move on? Maybe we should do the final 2 steps first, or 3 steps first. But
no, I love your question. I love it because it's asked with so much integrity, and I think it's asked really. You ask the question like a man. Like a woman wouldn't necessarily ask that question the way that you asked it.
Well,
And I think it's important to just validate what you just did, because I just love that men tend to take their commitments so seriously.
I think women do too. Women that grow up in a religious way, that are like, okay, like my vow and my commitment in front of God and my family is like for life.
And 69% of breakups are initiated by women.
Really?
Yes, divorces, 69%. So I think that we have a different...
Women are less their word than men, huh?
I think we have a different relationship to it in a way. I think that we care about our internal life and our emotions and our feelings. And if we don't feel like it's the right place, we will then, choose that.
Yeah.
To honor that. That's, obviously, forgive me for stereotypes.
Sure, of course.
But I just really appreciate it, because I look to men with that kind of ferocity of commitment and keep your word, like with great respect and honor, like wow, we really need to aspire to be more like that.
Yes.
But so it's a great question. I think it is. So let me relate to your question to just kind of finishing up the step 2, which is I think when we go to self-reflect about taking personal responsibility, which you're going to have to do big time in order to break that commitment. You want to ask yourself questions that are going to actually foster growth and development. And most of us ask ourselves shame-based questions, and that's why we can't take personal responsibility.
What questions do we usually ask?
What's wrong with me?
Oh, right, yeah.
What's wrong with me?
Why can't I keep it together? Why can't we make it work?
Why doesn't anybody love me?
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? How can I be so stupid? Right. So we'll ask.
How didn't I see this coming before?
Right.
I didn't see the red flags.
This coming? What's wrong? Yeah. So it's basically some variation on the theme of what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
That's not going to ever foster growth and development. Like the questions that you want to be asking are, okay, if this is what I keep creating, what part of me feels safer being alone than in relationship? Or how do I give my power away to try and be liked? Where do I, show up in ways that are like self-disparaging or, not really standing for myself so that I train someone else to treat me badly? It's like those kinds of questions are going to lead to emancipation from old patterns, and you're going to become a better version of yourself. And I think if we lose something that we were once deeply invested in with our whole hearts, that we have to come out of the experience as better versions of ourselves to really live with ourselves. We're going to come out more humble, more generous, more soft-hearted, more conscious, more aware of the impact of our choices on another person. And ultimately, so that's effective suffering, right? Now we're talking about effective suffering to
deeper empathy, be in service more.
Yeah, exactly. Like the cost. A lot of us just skim over these things. Our partner can ask us for things for a long time and we don't think it's important. And then when we lose the relationship, we go, wow, that was like super important. That was nothing to skim over. I should have taken that more seriously. So we're learning about relationships as we go forward.
Yeah.
And I think that the commitment to then implement that moving forward is what helps us to live with ourselves. The step 3 is about going back and healing the original wound in our heart. We talked a little bit about that in the Calling in the One conversation, like what's the I'm not wanted or the I'm alone, and how have you been showing up in ways that have kind of recreated that story. And the most important part is like, well, what's really true?
Yeah.
Because these are lies that we've been living inside of. And if you were really centered in that deeper truth, like how would you be showing up in all your relationships? So you really have a chance to graduate from old painful patterns inside of that.
Okay.
And then step 4 is...
I love the word you use here, the love alchemist.
Love alchemist.
I love that. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's about being generative of the future, of a positive future. So it's the recognition that people are going to lash out, that people are going to do, unconscious things because that's what's normal in a breakup. Right. So I normalize that. Like nobody goes through conscious uncoupling perfectly. Like we're going to do this. Everybody goes through it messy.
Yeah.
Because a breakup is like a birth canal. Like you get your face smushed in, you're like in it. You don't know where you're going. You're kind of out of control. So you're doing the best you can. And so step 4 is about setting an intention for a positive outcome for everyone impacted and aligning with that future. And so when there's breakdowns in communication, it's about responding in a generative way. So somebody comes to you and says, well, I thought you were going to do this and you said you were going to do that. Instead of saying, yeah, but you said this and blah, 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 going down, spiraling down, you might say, oh, wow, okay, you're upset. Let me see if I understand what you're upset about. Yeah, you're right. I did kind of mess that up. Okay, you're absolutely right. And that's inconsistent with the future that we're committed to creating too. I'm going to really try harder. So you make an amends.
I think that's the same thing for being in a relationship, is doing that as being, uncoupling.
I'm creating a whole thing for conscious recoupling for people who've gone through the program, because actually that's what happens sometimes.
Yeah.
So the program could actually be for people who are just really struggling in their relationship too.
Or it's ended and they got back together, or any of those options. Got you.
Yeah. So it's about learning how to repair.
Yeah.
And repairing in a way that's not necessarily about getting back together again. Right? Repairing in a way that says, even though you're not my primary mate, I value you.
I love you and care about you.
I value our connection. I value who you've been. I have a daughter with my former husband, who I affectionately call my husband. And I value him for so many reasons.
Yes.
He's the one father my daughter will ever have. He gave me the gift of our daughter. He shows up, he fathers her really well. Like I'm constantly demonstrating how valuable he is to me and to our family. He has like a place of honor in my life. That's how I hold him. That's how I treat him. And I like to remind people that, when we're in relationships, we're always building, we're investing in the kind of emotional bank with each other. You compliment, you support, you show up for things.
Right.
I think that when you have children, or if you have a business relationship, for instance, where you have ongoing things happening, you still want to invest in the relationship. You're just investing
in a different way.
But you're investing in the health of your family in the same way that you might, be generous to a cousin or to your brother. Like somebody has not left your family. If you have children, that person's still your family.
Yeah, of course. So when did you realize he wasn't the one anymore?
It was kind of gradual, truthfully. And for me, it had to do with the disparity in our missions.
So you had different alignments.
We did, and when we got married, it looked like they were the same thing.
Huh.
But I think that it took a few years to reveal that they really were not. Now, sometimes when people have different values, they complement each other, right? So my value of expansion and growth and moving, onwards and upwards all the time, aspiring to be a better human being and evolve my own consciousness. I'm a growth junkie. I'm a change junkie.
Yeah.
He is very Buddhist, and his practice is really around more like accepting what is and seeing the beauty in what is. So I think you can have a marriage like that and have it work if you're inspired by each other and you're valuing each other and you're learning a bit of each other's practice.
You're growing together.
Because, they are two beautiful sides of the same coin, and one could actually learn from the other. But with us, it just kind of fell flat. Like it just wasn't going anywhere. And we're both kind of really devoted to those paths. And
the mission. And you don't want to give up on your mission.
You can't, in a way.
Otherwise, you're like giving up on yourself.
Yeah, he would never have asked that of me. And I would never have asked that of him. So we just decided, it was actually a very loving decision between us. We decided that if we were both feeling held back on our missions and our purposes, that what we would do is just reconfigure the family so that we were both free to pursue and go all the way with what we were called and committed to.
But what about your commitment to the marriage forever?
Well, I think.
How do you let go of that conversation?
We just made a different decision. And we decided that we were going to love each other outside of the form of the marriage. That the mantle of marriage was not an appropriate one for our relationship anymore. It wasn't the best one for us. And I think it was really a great decision. I mean, I just see what's happened for him in the aftermath, and I see what's happened for me. And I wouldn't be who I am now, and he wouldn't be who he is now.
Right. What if one person really wants to stay in a relationship or makes the other person wrong for wanting to end it because they're not willing to work hard enough, or they're not willing to sacrifice enough, or they don't share the same values, or they said one thing and they took it back? How does that person who wants to evolve and wants to uncouple consciously out of love or grow from that, how does that person handle the person who doesn't get it? Or doesn't see it, or makes them wrong for it.
It's one of the things that makes breakups so hard is that rarely are two people in the same place.
Right.
I mean, I was the one that suggested the ending, but we had been engaging this dialogue, so at the time it wasn't
a shocker.
It wasn't a big shocker, and he was very, very gracious about it. But that was not the norm. I think the norm is usually what you're talking
reacting,
about.
Getting mad.
And the thing about what happens at the end of a relationship is usually there's one person who is the initiator of the breakup, and usually it's going on for them for a while. And they're
not just one moment. Oh, this isn't working.
No, it's
like
going months or years. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what they're doing is they're getting a lot of their grieving done in the marriage. And they are building a life outside of the marriage so that their identity is not so wrapped up in the marriage.
Interesting.
And so by the time they're ready to say this is over, they've kind of done a lot of their inner work around accepting that. And the other person is shocked.
And so they're reacting, and they have a long way to go.
They have a longer way to go. But conscious uncoupling is also important to the person who's leaving, because they too have a victimization story that's justifying the leaving, and they too have duplicated patterns, and it looks like it's happening to them.
They didn't give me enough, that's why I'm leaving, or they weren't showing up in a way that I needed, or whatever.
Without being aware that they didn't ask for that, or that or that who they were being influenced to the other person was showing up as, so they're likely to duplicate that dynamic with someone else.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then the fifth step.
Create your happily even afterlife.
Yes.
How do we do that?
Well, that has to do with taking care of the whole community. And, I like to say that relationships have two sides to the same coin. There's the private experience of what's happening between a couple. I say that relationship takes place between the sheets and between the lines.
Sure.
Right? But then there's the public aspect of relationship. And there is what the couple means to the community. The couple means something, obviously, to their own children, but also their extended family, to the in-laws, and also their friends or their spiritual group. And, we all know that we talk about people as couples of being the pillars of the community. So in some way, they make the community feel safe.
Wow. And when they're not together, how do you make them feel safe?
Right. And then people feel torn. And do I need to give loyalties to one or the other? Because we'll kind of all devolve into a concept, an idea of war.
Right.
So there's a way that, we need to take care of the community. One of the things I did with my own mom is she did what anybody who's loving would do. When I said I was getting divorced, she started to immediately kind of devalue my husband and the marriage, right? Because she's trying to show solidarity.
And that's not helpful, is it?
I think on an emotional level,
family members are like, "Oh, he wasn't good enough for you anyways, or you can do better, or this and that. He always did this."
Well,
that's not healthy for the conscious coupling.
No, it's not. But what is helpful is that they're extending their love and their loyalty.
Of course.
And that's really what they want to do. I'm here for you. I love you. I see you. I'm on your side. So that you want to keep. But I had to educate her and say, you know, we're not going to do it that way. And this is who Mark is for me.
Yes,
and
that's
I'm not a
powerful.
perfect person either, by the
Right.
way. And
It's not like I'm the
yeah.
golden ticket and everything was perfect. And
Yeah, and he was just the wrong guy,
Yeah.
you know, like, so it was co-created, and this is just a choice we're making, but we're going to do it differently, and we're going to be really respectful and honorable. And oh, by the way, he's still your son-in-law.
Mm.
You just have to get used to the fact that I'm not married to him anymore.
Wow.
So, and she was on board for that. So now she
Yeah.
buys him Christmas gifts like everybody else.
That's
You know,
nice.
so you know, that's just our quirky family.
So it's conscious uncoupling with families as well.
It is.
Like they have to learn how to be conscious about it.
Yes, they do.
And not just be like negative, feeding you into this negativity.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, in my own family, it was great because my mother had had a very bad divorce from my stepfather, actually, decades before, and they had never really resolved a lot of anger between them. And then she watched how I did this with my own former husband, and she went back and created a conscious uncoupling with him.
Powerful.
Yeah, so
Powerful example.
So now that everybody's, you know, on speaking terms and everybody's friendly, and
Nice.
there's more of a feeling like we have one family and we don't have these fragments of relationships everywhere.
And if you want to learn more about mastering relationships, then make sure to check out this video right here.
Till death do us apart, when de facto, for the majority of couples today, it's still love dies, not till death do us apart.
That's when we divorce.
Yeah.
We break up, when
Yeah.
love dies.
Yes.
Yeah.